for this debate concerning the motion of censure on the Commission. As we had last time, only one round of political group speakers, no catch the eye, and no blue cards will be accepted. I start by giving the floor to the first signatory, Jordan Bardella. 3 minutes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Madame.
Thank you, Madam President. President von der Leyen, Madam, for many years now, under your presidency, the European Union has been rushing headlong to no one knows where. The Mercosur agreement with South America is a sad symbol of this. In the face of Trump's America, you haven't managed to reach an agreement without counterparties. You actually signed the trade surrender of Europe. While other major powers are fighting hard to defend their interests, you're handing everything to our competitors on a plateau. Our factories, our jobs, our industry. Next, you came forward with a proposal for a European budget up by 86%, while people back in our home states are being expected to tighten their belts. At the same time, you're sabotaging the CAP by depriving farmers of 24% of the funding they need to survive. If there were any doubt about the consideration you have for our farmers, I think those doubts can now be dispelled. This headlong rush also takes place in terms of bureaucracy. Thousands and thousands of new texts. Europe is, once again, the world champion of red tape. By doing this, you are punishing our businesses by forcing them into a process of degrowth, which is signing the death warrant. Madam, for the first time for 50 years, the French agricultural trade balance will be in deficit. And it seems you've killed the European motor industry for many years to come. Migration too, the European Migration Pact threatens to slap financial sanctions on member states, thereby forcing us to accept more and more migrants at the local level. Enlargement also continues, ridiculous enlargements. Tomorrow, Turkey perhaps, which is completely alien to our civilization, will be sitting down around our table. In the near future, there will soon be nothing left of Europe except a sad image with flags to Iran, Syria. Madam, you seem to be dreaming of a Europe without governments. Your commissioners are paid €27,000 a month, and red tape is out of control. It's not just Europe is not a machine, it's a civilization. Civilizations can be managed by the imposition of standards with the consent of the people. As together with the French members from the European People's Party, I would say this censorship brings us to a moment of truth. You can't turn a blind eye to our farmers. Voting for the motion of no confidence in the European Commission won't destroy Europe, it will save it. For us, the patriots, one thing is sure. We'll be voting, our heads held high, in favour of this motion of no confidence. This is a vote against the Europe of Macron, the Europe of von der Leyen. Above all, this is a vote for the survival of Europe of free nations.
Now I give the floor to the first signatory of the second motion, Manon Aubry. 3 minutes.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam von der Leyen, you ought to leave. You have been accompanying the genocide in Gaza by your cowardness and inaction. Tens of thousands of civilians and children have been left to die under Israeli bombs. You still refuse to stop trade relations with Israel and to introduce an arms embargo when we're looking at the 19th package of sanctions against Russia. Given those numbers, how can you look at an entire people being decimated, children starving? Madam von der Leyen, you should leave. You've capitulated to Donald Trump, not just by supporting his neo-colonialist plan for Gaza, but also by giving way on all of the economic demands of Europe to benefit the US. It's been a one-way street against democracy, the vassalization of the EU and accepting the fascisation of Europe. You should leave, Madam von der Leyen. You've acted against democracy with this Mercosur free trade agreement, disregarding national votes in parliaments and the unity of the member states. You're killing off our agriculture. You're poisoning with dangerous pesticides and destroying the planet. Madam von der Leyen, you should leave. Because it's a fact. For a year now, we've seen your administration looking solely at economic governance, looking at large corporations who are responsible for human rights violations, and yet you don't do anything about it. Reorientate this. You can hear the right and extreme right applauding your actions. Extreme right, well, let's talk about them. They spread their hate everywhere. Their abject policies, criminalising abortion, targeting LGBT people, a knife in the back of the rule of law, and I'll leave it there. It's this extreme right that you're answering to. You, Mr. Manfred Weber, as well, you've decided to build your majorities. So the motion of no confidence from Jordan Bardella's group is hypocritical to the extreme. Mrs. von der Leyen, you ought to leave. We see people who are losing their jobs, who can't pay their bills, the destruction of public services under your budgetary austerity. You can find money, however, for assault tanks, but not for hospitals. Madam von der Leyen, 60% of Europeans would like to see you leave office. You ought to leave. This motion of no confidence is also a moment for political clarity between those who want to pursue your deleterious policies to benefit a small number of people and those who are fighting the fight against you. To colleagues in the Greens and the Socialists in this chamber, what have you won in this single year of Ms. von der Leyen's administration if it's not just complicity with genocide and the forcing through of free trade agreements against our will? Madam von der Leyen, you should leave. Colleagues, it's time to choose.
Now I give the floor to the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, for 10 minutes.
President Metsola, honourable members. The world is in the most precarious and perilous state it has been in for decades. And Europe is on high alert, from reckless airspace incursions to attempts at economic coercions, from ruthless attacks on Ukraine to direct threats to our own security. Europe is threatened from the east, it is challenged from within, and for the global south, what we do next is being scrutinized closely. As we saw at the recent United Nations General Assembly, the existing international order is threatened by splintering faster than we expected. The point I'm making here is that we are in a period of maximum uncertainty and explosive volatility. This chaotic and threatening landscape was the reason I started my State of the Union address by saying, Europe is in a fight. And it is why on that day I made a pitch for unity. Today I want to reaffirm my commitment to work with all of you to keep that unity inside this Parliament, among member states, and between our institutions. The point of this unity is not necessarily for all of us to agree on every detail. In fact, tension and debate is an inherent and important part of policy making. But perhaps more than ever before, it is about the bigger picture, about rallying around the things we do have in common to deliver for the Europeans in this dangerous world, to bolster our security, to protect our democracy, to support our industry, to strengthen our social model. The point I'm making is that we need to focus on what really matters, which is to deliver for Europeans. Because, honourable members, the truth is that our adversaries are not only ready to exploit any divisions, They are actively inciting those divisions in the first place. Just look at the last few weeks. On the same day as we met here to discuss the State of the Union, 24 Russian drones entered the Polish airspace. We've seen Russian fighter jets pushing boundaries above Estonian airspace. And we have seen a number of drones in the skies above Europe causing disruption at our airports. And look at what happened in Sochi just last week, where Putin gave his annual Valdai Club speech. We should listen very carefully to his words. He put the blame on Europe for his continued war of aggression in Ukraine. He crowed about what he coined as the cracks of the edifice of Europe and the shaken unity within our union. He's not hiding his contempt for our union and the foundation it is built on, and he is not hiding his glee and support for all of his obedient friends in Europe who are doing his work for him. This is the oldest trick in the book. Sow division, spread disinformation, create a scapegoat, all to turn Europeans against each other, to try to lower our guard while we fight each other, to weaken our resolve and our resilience. This is a trap, and we simply cannot fail for it. The strongest message we can send instead is that of unity. Whether we are working on our defense readiness, or building our democracy shield, on boosting our competitiveness, or on creating quality jobs for all in today's modern economy, this is what we need to focus on. And this is what myself and the entire college here by my side want to work on with this House. Honourable members, of course I know there are some of you who are still unsure how to vote later this week, but who are also concerned about some of the issues these motions mention in passing, whether on Gaza or Ukraine, trade or the United States. I know that they come from a place of genuine and legitimate concerns. And there are other topics that are causing worries concerning our economic security, like dependencies, cost of living, bureaucracy, food security, climate change, how to protect our democracies and societies. The list is long. This is why I want to renew my pledge that this college will engage with you in whatever format is needed to try to find the answers together. I believe it is a common responsibility that we all have in this dangerous moment in history, and I know that this House is ready to take on its responsibility to deliver for Europeans when it matters the most. And you can count on me and this Commission to share that responsibility with you, because the message we send now will reverberate around Europe and beyond. And I believe that message must be a message of unity and that Europe stands together and it delivers together. Thank you, and long live Europe.
Thank you. Thank you, President von der Leyen. And now for the EPP Group, Manfred Weber. 3 minutes.
Madam President, Parliament, Madam President of the Commission, dear Commissioners, dear colleagues, the second time in a few weeks, I have to say it is becoming a little bit ridiculous. A motion of censure is a serious tool for a parliament, an important right to defend a democratic Europe. Currently, this last resort of a parliament is being misused by you as a simple propaganda tool, and I hope you have collected enough video material now for your French campaign, obviously taking place here. The EPP will vote against. We are living in turbulent times: war, trade, energy, housing, climate change. That are the issues that people care. First of all, also for my group, competitiveness. Yes, we can have different opinions, no doubt about this, but we have to work now. We need stability and have to work. And we have a Commission exactly doing this, working and delivering. And for us as EPP, it's clear we support our Commission. And Ursula, let me also thank you personally. All leaders face in this moment of time enormous challenges. Leaders are fundamentally challenged in times of big changes. And that's why thank you for your service. We support again our Commission President and also our Commission for their work. And it's funny to see that we have today an initiative from the right extreme and from the left extremes joining forces. You should consider probably to join in one group, and I have already a group name for this initiative. We can call it WAA, and that is We Are Against, because that is exactly what you are showing every day. You have no idea, but showing where you are against. And let me just use one example in your common commitment. The US trade agreement. You know, when we speak about the US trade deal, you both criticized it. My first consideration is, where was then Viktor Orban, Alice Weidel, Le Pen, Salvini, when Ursula von der Leyen was fighting for European workers, farmers and business? They were silent. Orban was caring about his luxury holiday villa. Le Pen was concerned about the court cases on the table. And Salvini was swimming in plastic floating toys. That were the pictures of the PFE representatives during summer. And now you are lecturing us. You are those people who have strong ties with MAGA. So what are you doing for us in this moment of time? So that is my first consideration. The second consideration is about, you are telling us that nation state is much stronger than the European Union as a whole. You know, look to Switzerland. They still have 39% of tariffs. Look to the situation there. They have now a fundamental debate about chlorine chicken import. Ursula von der Leyen defended 50% and that's it, even for pharmaceutical. A big success in the last days. And we made clear that legislation for the European market is made here in this European Parliament, not in Washington, not in Silicon Valley. That it was achieved by under the leadership of Ursula von der Leyen and Šefčovič. So thank you for your service in these issues. I will not go in further content arguments, because you are fighting against any trade agreement, against any security architecture, against responsibility in fight against climate change. That's a reality. PFE and left, you both are united in your love of destruction. The EPP loves to build up, to achieve, to construct. We are the party of European integration. We will continue under the leadership of this strong Commission. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now I give the floor to the S&D, to Irache Garcia Perez. 4 minutes.
Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you very much, President. Now, can we afford to have a Europe that's bogged down while Putin intensifies his war against Ukraine and launches incursions on European territory? Can we stand idly when Trump has declared a trade war on our workers? Can we remain silent in the face of Netanyahu's genocide against the Palestinian people? Can we resign ourselves to the rise of a far right that wants to destroy our social achievements? The response is simple: no, we cannot. But something has to be very, very clear in this particular debate. The European Commission cannot use as a crutch those who deny climate change, which is killing our citizens, and it is destroying our territories as well. It cannot deny gender-based violence, which is costing the lives of millions of women, the right to abortion, those who applaud the genocidal war of Netanyahu and have turned everything into, even housing, into speculative business for vulture funds. This is not the Europe we need. It is the Europe that we have to defeat. Madam Aubry, Mr. Shirdevan, I'd also like to address you. We share the same position on Gaza. We condemn genocide and demand an immediate end to Netanyahu's impunity. But there's something that divides us. You have given up negotiation as a means of achieving results. And instead of continuing to press for concrete measures in the face of genocide, you're proposing this motion that you know will fail. And you know it'll fail, and that would require has the support of the right to win anyway. This isn't a political response. You are not Europe, and I am not Europe. It's not individuals that are Europe. It's not this building, and it's not the Berlaymont either. It's not the council, it's not the prime ministers either. Europe is all of us, all citizens. And for that, I'd like to say to you that we listen to the voices of hundreds of thousands of citizens, men and women in Europe who've gone onto the streets in Amsterdam, Berlin, Madrid, Milan, throughout Europe, calling for an end to genocide immediately. Let's listen to those voices. If the role is for us to really move forward on this particular front, and we played a role in getting rid of the certain components of the trade agreement with Israel. Also, it is thanks to us that digital sovereignty, European digital sovereignty, was protected. And also, climate neutrality is something that we call out for. In the face of the empty cry of the far right and a left that has given up on governing, our response is clear. Dialogue, negotiation, and compromise are what will bear fruit and improve the lives of European citizens. These are not words, these are deeds. You have to choose between your allies and those who are not our friends. Support for you is not unconditional. You have to understand that. We want to see those promises that are in the working program of the Commission. We want those realized, those that were presented to us in November, because the socialists will not allow for Europe to be enchained by fanaticism. We want peace, not war. We want justice, not genocide. We want solidarity, not self-centered approaches. This is the Europe that we will never allow collapse. This is the Europe that Social Democrats will defend staunchly to the last moment. Thank you.
The PFP Group, Kinga Gál, 2 minutes.
Elnök asszony, az Európai Unió.
Madam President, the European Union has grown weaker. A number of poor decisions have undermined security, economy, and the sovereignty of member states. Instead of peace, you want sanctions and more arms. A poor migration pact is what you want. With the Green Deal and poor economic and trade agreements, you are leaving families, companies and farmers in the lurch. We can see the speeded up accession negotiations of Ukraine will damage the EU, the security of the EU, the rules and the unity of these rules have now been moved to being based on ideology. There's no security and accountability, and the rule of law is being wielded as a weapon. There are double standards being applied to democratic governments. Because of diverse opinions, you're undermining other opinions. In your speech, you said you didn't want to change direction, and this is damaging European unity and European cooperation. And that is the problem. The Commission is the problem as well. Madam President, the faith of citizens in you is waning. Even Martin Weber would agree with that. I'm sure he has some sort of phobia of my Prime Minister. And We've seen the election results in the Czech Republic. And we, therefore, Patriots for Europe, are demanding change. It is time for you to go.
Thank you, Ms. Gall. Now for the ECR group, Nicola Procaccini. 3 minutes. 3 minutes.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you, Madam President. Two motions with the same objective. Some of the arguments are different, others are exactly the same. In the motion from the extreme left, the sole focus is on the Israel-Palestine question. Not a single word condemning Hamas. Not a single word referring to Israeli hostages, both dead and alive. No reference to the 7th of October, which the anniversary which we'll be celebrating. However, this absolute condemnation of Israel. This focus on Israel in the resolution leads, in effect, to an expression of solidarity with Putin's Russia. Another passage which is worth underlining is that which refers to the lack of response from the part of the Commission to the climate and social crisis. It's interesting to note here how cause and effect are linked. The idea that the Green Deal is actually a source of enormous social malaise, that's true. Moreover, the people of Europe are voting for the right rather than the left just because of that. I think your brain must be completely packed with ideology to fail to see this self-evident fact. This is quite different from the other motion we're talking about today. In that motion, too, there are quite justified points of criticism regarding the Commission's lack of transparency, its tendency to muscle in on national powers as set out in the European treaties. However, there are two issues on which these two motions coming from the two extremes of Parliament cover common ground. Criticism of the trade agreement with South America. There things get a bit more complicated. Obviously, it's very much, or would be very much in our interest to export our products duty-free to 700 million consumers. The problem, however, is it's European farmers who are already being crushed by the weight of the European Green Deal who are paying the price for this. And the fact is they will now be subjected to imports coming from across the Atlantic which aren't subjected to the same rules. At the same time, we have an agreement with the Pump administration. Of course, this agreement isn't perfect, but let's face up to the fact the European market is the best market for our exporters. The idea of a trade war with our main ally would only serve the interests of those who hate President Trump more than they love their own peoples. Of course, in the ECR, every national delegation will be free to vote on the basis of its own conscience and the interests of its own people. The European Union will, for us, never be a prison. It is an alliance of nations, which does not try to suffocate their hopes and aspirations, but promotes cooperation rather than pushing through its own ideas.
Now I give the floor to Valérie Ayé, 3.5 minutes.
Merci, Madame la
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, two new votes of no confidence coming from the two extremes of this chamber, but do cover a degree of common ground. Some other members have said that. We can see that this is undermining Europe, and we're seeing it being undermined from within. They're manipulating the concept of freedom of expression with the sole intent of sowing hatred. You can see that they share all this on their social media. They want to have this motion of censure to exploit as a social podium. And I would like to undermine the hypocrisy of this. When you're talking about against Mr. Trump, and yet you were the first to support him. And you, Manon Aubry, when you said nothing has been done against Benjamin Netanyahu's government 3 weeks ago, there was a proposal to act from Ms. von der Leyen, and you didn't support that. What had been negotiated and agreed on in this chamber on the occasion of the last plenary. That's the true face. the true face of these populists. They're agents provocateurs, they're trolls. Simple lesson for trolls, don't feed them. Don't give them the opportunity to exist. You don't deal with them. So, Madam President, of course, Renew will not be supporting this motion of censure, but that doesn't mean that everything's going well, because since the first motion of censure back in July this year, we cannot see any considerable progress having been made in this Parliament. The democratic majority in this chamber is not happy. We're still suffering. So it's up to you and your college to invest more in relations with this Parliament. But that's not everything. And I'm turning here to my EPP and Socialist colleagues now. Don't look to your extremes. Don't stop giving them oxygen by voting their amendments. Look to the centre. That's where things are happening. Because, Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, we have our work cut out. We have existential urgencies at the gate. There's a war in Ukraine. There's a cultural war assaulting our democracies. There's a trade and commerce war against the EU. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have to continue to stand against Putin. We need to stand shoulder to shoulder to defend our democracies. We need to stand unified to defend our competitiveness. Madam President, what we want now is action, specifics, results for Europeans. This weekend, once again, business leaders were asking me, how come that things have gone so far? How did Mr. Trump manage to do so much in a single term of office? And we only managed to implement 11% of the Draghi report in the course of a single legislature. So we want positive action. 2026 should be the year of the Draghi report, and 2026 needs to be the year of the 28th regime of the Savings Union, Savings Investment Union, investment in public procurement. 2026 needs to be the year of generating a genuine European semester for the state of under the rule of law. We need to start discussion on the reform of our institutions. Our group, Madam President, is ready to roll out that agenda. The responsibility falls on us in this Parliament. So we cannot be blocked by Babic, Fico or Orban. Let's wake up. We're at an important juncture. Either we're going to take the right path or we're going to condemn ourselves to the dustbin of history, and Renew will never accept that.
Now I give the floor to Terry Reintke. 3 minutes.
Thanks, Madam President. Dear Commission President, dear Commissioners, dear colleagues, it is true, many European citizens feel a lack of leadership coming from this Commission. After a mandate where we were really fighting for the climate, we were moving forward the social agenda with the minimum wage directive. There was the first ever LGBTIQ equality strategy. We are now confronted with an unclarity regarding where you are actually leading us. The simplification agenda, for example, has become an entry point for headless deregulation, not only endangering our climate goals, but also making it impossible for our companies to plan ahead. And they rightfully ask themselves, will the Commission stand by the commitments made, or will they throw them under the omnibus? This is toxic for our businesses, and it creates distrust in our decision-making processes. Urgency procedures and delays of implementation have become widespread and poisoning. The latest example is yet another postponement of the implementation of the deforestation legislation. This has to stop. On the US deal, Madam President, many people felt humiliated over the summer because instead of clearly standing up to the bully in the White House and his tech bros, we have rewarded his erratic attacks on international law. And also, and this has been said before, your late reaction to the atrocities committed in Gaza have created anger and distrust all across the European Union. And colleagues, all of this criticism demands clear words and the change of the way how we do politics here. And for this, we need to see action in the Commission work programme, on climate, on social. We have a housing crisis waging all over Europe, the deterioration of rule of law and fundamental rights, and yes, also stronger action, as has recently been started, on the devastating war in Gaza. We will hold this Commission to account to deliver on your promises. At the same time, colleagues, we cannot discuss any motion of censure without looking at the geopolitical situation that we are in. Brutal attacks in Ukraine, far-right gaining ground, and the dismantling of democracy in the United States. Do we really, in this crucial moment, want an institutional crisis of the European Union? What exactly would it solve for us, for Europeans, not to have a commission right now? To go through a long process of reappointing commissioners with exactly the same majorities here in this House and even worse majorities in Council? Would the member states magically suddenly change their political affiliation and move us into a better direction? No, that's wishful thinking. And what we need right now is a clear political strategy. Because we have to change course, yes, but we have to pick our instruments wisely. You can never take the Greens for granted. We demand to move forward on our issues, but we are ready to engage to solve all of these problems that are ahead of us. And in the end, Madam Commission President, the European Union is not weakened by yet another motion of censure, even if some people find it ridiculous. That will very likely be unsuccessful. What is our biggest problem right now is that your own political group is very often not clear on which side of this parliament they stand on. Do they want to work with a pro-European majority of the centre, or do they want to go with the far right that hates Europe and democracy? That is the question where we need clarity on to move forward on our issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I give the floor now to Martin Schiedewan for the Left Group. 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Weber, Ms. Heyer, Ms. Garcia Perez. The fact that a democratic vote of no confidence threatens our democracy is rubbish. Every time the trainer of a football team is playing against relegation, every time a company or a business is threatened with bankruptcy, management has to leave. However, despite ongoing failure, some people in this House want to give the European Commission yet another chance, yet another chance. This is simply hollowing out trust in the European Union throughout our continent, and this is fundamentally damaging to our democracy. Ms. von der Leyen, you say that Europe has to deliver, but you're simply failing to do that. Your policies, which are characterized by whipping up fear and constant mistakes, you have failed the European Union by handing Donald Trump a trade agreement which will cost us thousands and thousands of jobs and economic disaster. You're concluding one economic agreement after another, thereby sacrificing our farmers and the whole internal market. People in Ukraine and Gaza are also continuing to suffer because the European Union has simply cast them into political irrelevance. At the same time, you are undermining our states and the rule of law by failing to fight the fight against climate change. So, your efforts to lead European policy making mean Europe now finds itself in the second division in global policies. The time has come for you to leave office. You are politically bankrupt. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, this current European Commission will not tackle any of the challenges facing Europe, economic, social, and environmental. And we all know that. We have seen this for a long time. Abundant proof has been provided. So the things that you're talking about all the time simply demonstrate that we should be voting in favour of this motion. Thank you.
Eva Zahajowska-Hernik.
Pani Przewodnicząca, tym razem
Madam President, on this occasion, the right and the left want you to leave office. Your term of office has been characterised by arrogance, backdoor deals, and you have made us look ridiculous vis-à-vis the US. You have undermined our bargaining power, negotiating power, and allow us to be subjugated to the yoke of the US, and Mr. Trump is laughing at us. Maybe this should be an opportunity to generate jobs but why should our citizens suffer? Maybe you could send your children, your husband, to the front to fight if you think that's worthwhile. And then thinking about Pfizergate, about what happened there. Again, it was to the detriment of our health that all this happened. Issues of security, where you're making us dependent on others like Mercosur states and food coming from there, and undermining European agriculture. And then censorship and mass migration here in Europe. I'm sure some people are doing well, but Poland is not a government of this imperial, so leave office.
For resolution B10 400 2025 and B10 402 2025 to wind up this debate, and the vote will be held on Thursday.